When to automate, when to delegate, and when to suck it up. Today, I want to share with you a quick guide about when you should automate processes in your business and how to think about the automation in order to make it in the most efficient and effective manner. For those of you who don't know what is the difference between being efficient and effective, this is a very important distinction. When you are efficient, you're basically doing things in a way that doesn't consume a lot of resources. So let's say you do it very fast or without a lot of capital. And when you're being effective, you are doing the things that really move the needle and are really impactful. So to give an example, let's say you want to bake a cake, so you can chop cucumbers and tomatoes very fast, and this could be very efficient, but it's not effective, because if you want to bake a cake you don't need tomatoes or cucumbers. So this is a very important distinction. A lot of people are very productive, very efficient, they move very fast, but they don't do things that move the needle and the trajectory. They are moving not towards the right goal or towards their goal, so they are not effective, but they are efficient. And this is something that we should be aware of, especially when building automations. A lot of people, when they just start to build automation, they fall in love with the idea of just automating everything. And sometimes automation isn't the solution. Sometimes people spend 10 hours on building an automation of something that they could have done within 10 minutes, or outsource and delegate for someone for $5 per hour to do it on a daily basis. So this is something to be aware of, and I decided to create this short guide. I actually recorded a podcast today. I was a guest and I was asked this question, and this gave me the idea of creating this short guide. Obviously, I automated parts of the creation of the guide. But let's just go through this and let me share with you a few examples and stories of things that I encountered on my own journey of automating stuff. So first of all, automation is powerful. This we know. It allows you to reduce errors. It can free up humans. If you're the CEO or the entrepreneur or the business owner, you can work on stuff that is more strategic and more impactful. But as I said, not every process should be automated, and it requires considering the pros and cons of whether or not you should automate or not. So when to automate, here are a few guiding questions. So is the process repetitive and rule-based? A process that is repetitive, that you do very often, should be automated. If it's just a one-time thing, so just suck it up and do the task or do whatever is necessary. Another thing to keep in mind is whether or not it is rule-based. If the parameters for the decision making are not crystal clear, it would be very hard to automate, because if it takes human intuition or human expertise, it's very hard to translate the intuition or expertise into an automation with constraints. So in this case, the automation will be less relevant if the workflow isn't rule-based. How frequently is the process performed? Okay, pretty straightforward. Is the process time consuming when done manually? So if the process isn't time consuming, you shouldn't automate it, because if it takes only 10 seconds, you might as well just do it or delegate it. Is the process stable or does it change frequently? Especially, and this is relevant, especially I guess when you do browser automation, it happens to me very often. If I do something without connecting to APIs of the platforms, and I do something in a more black hat way that violates the terms and conditions, so let's say you're scraping something or you're doing browser automation. So if the process changes frequently, I mean the platform changes the way it is built, so the automation will become irrelevant very fast. So for example, let's say you automate Facebook DMs. Let's say you want to automate the DMs, and you want to click the button that says message, and in 2 weeks time Facebook changes the text on the message to DM or something like this, and your selector was message, and now it is DM, so the automation will break. So this is just a stupid example. So but just to convey the point that you must have a process that is pretty stable and doesn't change frequently, because if it changes frequently and the automation doesn't have the ability to really think, so the automation will break. Next question is, what is the potential ROI for automating the process? We are here in order to make money or save time, like create more resources for ourselves or the stakeholders, so we must have a positive ROI. Another question is, are there any regulatory or compliance issues to consider? So many times when you build a browser automation, you are violating the terms of and conditions of the platform. This is something that you should be aware of. Will the automation improve customer or employee satisfaction? Also, very important. If the automation, even if it doesn't generate money directly, it might generate money indirectly. So for example, if it improves the employee satisfaction because they don't have to do tedious work on a daily basis, soul-sucking work, so maybe it is worth considering to build the automation. Or if the customers receive better support or faster support, this is still, it's very important, very impactful, so definitely something to consider. Can the process be standardized? We discussed this. And do you have necessary resources, time, budget, and skills to implement and maintain the automation? Obviously, this is also important. Some automations are very complex, a lot of moving parts, and if you don't have an automation architect, it's going to be irrelevant. So you might as well just automate only certain parts of the automation or delegate it. Now, when you want to prioritize the automation, there are a few things to consider, and these are parameters, but in general, you need to consider in any business initiative. So if you're split testing new ads or split testing a new funnel or testing new features for your SaaS or testing a new pitch deck that you're going to pitch to investors, I like these parameters. Basically, you assess the impact, you assess the effort involved in making the change, you assess the risk, and you assess the urgency. And this is a table. You give, you score each of those parameters in the scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, and then you can multiply the score or just add it up. So for example, process A has it's almost very impactful because it got the score of 4, almost effortless because it got the score of 2. Let's see, no, the effortless need to be 5 because the higher number need to be like the more positive thing. So in this case, a lot of effort is 1 and effortless is 5. So on a scale of 1 to 5, it got 2 on effort. So it means it does contain effort. It has medium amount of risk and it is very urgent. So we give it a 5, and then the total score is 14. I actually prefer multiplying, but this is just an example. Prioritize processes with higher total scores. So it's very important again to make sure that the positive thing has the higher score. So here in terms of effort, less effort is preferable. So less effort is 5. Effortless is 5. Now, when it comes to architecting the automation, you need to follow these steps. So first of all, you realize what is the current process in detail. This is very important. If someone approaches you and wants you to build an automation, but it doesn't have the standard operating procedure, the SOP, so you will go back and forth many times until you build the automation, and then they will want you to add stuff and change stuff. It will be pretty tedious and might even break many times. So it's very important to map the current process in detail. I highly recommend documenting the whole process at least 3 or 4 times with a video recording solution. So you can use Loom or Vimeo or OBS. Just record the whole process. Ask the client that you're doing the automation for them to record the whole process and walk you through the process. Then you identify areas for improvement and optimization. This is where your expertise comes into the game. So if you know that they are doing something in a not efficient manner, So let's say they are sourcing data and they are scraping LinkedIn instead of going directly to Apollo, which is a database for leads, which contains a lot of aggregated data that is pretty hard to get via LinkedIn, but everything is already aggregated in Apollo, so you can guide your customer to use Apollo instead of using LinkedIn. So when it comes to your expertise, you bring your expertise to the table, and the more tools you know, it will be easier for you to create impactful changes. Then you define the desired outcome and KPIs. Then you break down the process into smaller, manageable components. Then you determine any integration points with existing systems. So this is also something very important. When you're building an automation, you must figure out what is the tech stack of your customer, because you want to have as many integrations as possible. Yeah, you can use Zapier or Pebble or N8N in order to integrate stuff, but it is better to use the existing tools, and if they have solutions out of the box, it will be better. Let me clarify this. It is always better to use as little tools as possible. So whenever you have a software that provides more solutions within it, and if you can avoid adding a new software just for the sake of adding another component, it is better to focus on the first software that I suggested. Let me give you an example. If you want to automate something in the inbox, so you can fetch the emails from Gmail, move them to Zapier, move them to Excel, then do stuff, manipulate, and then send it back to the customer. This is one solution. The other solution is doing all the cleaning of the data and all the filtering with the native solutions that Gmail has in it. So Google offers filtering, Gmail offers filtering. You can create folders in Gmail. You can do a lot of stuff within Gmail. So whatever you can do within Gmail without involving other softwares is preferable. Now, the next thing is to design error handling and exception management. Understand when you're going to encounter syntax errors, compiling errors, and business errors. Then you should perhaps plan for scalability and future enhancements. This is not so crucial when dealing with small businesses. It's more crucial when you're building bigger projects. I usually focus on the quick and dirty projects. So scalability is something in the back of my mind, but I don't optimize for scalability at the get-go. Obviously, you should consider security and data privacy requirements, and then you should develop a testing strategy and create documentation with training materials. I usually just create an SOP with a video recording of how the automation is built and how to manage the automation. The next step is choosing the right tools. So you should figure out what types of processes are involved and which tools need to be involved. It's better to find a tool for every element or component in the process and just stick to it. So if you are good with CSVs and Excel, so just master Excel, or master Google Spreadsheet, or master Airtable. If you want to involve LLM, so it's better to focus on a specific LLM. Use only OpenAI or only Claude, because you want to gain mastery in a specific tool for each component. Then, as I said, you figure out the technology stack and integrations. You figure out what is the skill set of your team or your client's team. Then understand budget constraints, scalability requirements. These are all stuff that is redundant. Then you can think about different ways to automate. So sometimes you can use an RPA tool. I'm a big fan of RPA using Microsoft Power Automate desktop. Or you can use a low-code tool or no-code tool, Zapier, Pebble, N8N, whatever. Or you can create custom scripting using Python. Next thing to consider is whether or not you're going to use human in the loop. So human in the loop is basically an addition of humans to the automations, and you do this when you need to QA the output or add more context from a human being in many different cases. And Basically, you decide based on these parameters. So first of all, the complexity of the decision making required. So automations, it's not black and white, it's a continuum. You can automate processes, but you don't have to. Let me say this way. Even if you can't automate the whole process, but you can still automate meaningful parts of the process, it is still something worth considering. So if the process is very complex and there is important decision making required in the process, it still might make sense to automate. You shouldn't throw away the idea of automating just because you need the human in the loop in the whole workflow. Another thing to keep in mind when you're considering if you want to add a human in the loop, if there are any compliance requirements, if there is legal stuff involved and you want a human eye to validate stuff, so add a human at the end of the process. If there is a need for empathy or human judgment, let's say you're providing customer support, you don't want to automate the whole process because you want to create some empathy with the customers. You want to have a human in the loop in terms of handling exceptions or edge cases, and obviously it also boils down to the risk tolerance. If there is a lot of risk involved in the process, so it's better to have a lot of human in the loop. If there is little risk involved, so you can mitigate or minimize the amount of human in the loop. For example, if you're creating a YouTube automation channel and you just want to automate a ton of shorts, you don't need a human in the loop because who gives, you don't care about the output, you just want to generate volume. But if you're building a personal brand and you're uploading and you're sending an email to your list every day, so you have very little risk tolerance because your reputation is on the line, so you must have a human in the loop. Next thing is delegation and automation, and this is relevant and related to the human in the loop. So when implementing automation, consider delegating the following: process analysis and optimization, tool selection and implementation, development and coding, maintenance and update, training and change management, and monitoring and performance analysis. So you can just add, you can decide what you want to delegate. In general, it is very often when I build automations for clients, it's pretty straightforward what we want to delegate and what we want to automate. There is no really gray area because of the constraints or limitations of LLMs at the moment. Now, factors to consider when you delegate, you can decide whether or not you want to use in-house expertise or external consultants. If you have budget constraints, and if you want to keep, if you don't want to outsource important parts of the process because you don't want service providers to have, you don't want to rely on service providers. So let's say if you build an automation and you outsource a big chunk of the automation to a service provider and then they make adjustments and optimizations to the automation and they keep the source code, for example, then you're going to rely on them and they have all the knowledge, and eventually when you want to switch a service provider, you're kind of screwed. So also keep in mind whenever you're building an automation how you can control the source code and be the owner of the automation. And when you delegate, you want to make sure that you maintain control of the majority of the process. Now, when it comes to implementation best practices, I highly recommend that you start with a pilot project. Obviously establish clear metrics for success, and then you provide thorough training and support. You monitor the performance and gather feedback. Automation is never set and forget, and this is also a common myth or misconception in terms that people have about automation. Automation just saves you a lot of time and generates a lot of output for less input, but it's never set and forget. You should always optimize the automation and also document any changes that you have. You should add them to like a change log. This is something that many people don't do. Very important. And what else? Regularly, always review the automation, and at least depending on how important the automation is, you should review it and make sure that nothing is broken. Obviously, you should have error handling and reporting, but still, it's also very important every once in a while to monitor and review the automation. Now, let me give you a few examples of use cases of automating. So, automating LinkedIn cold outreach for a social media marketing agency. So let's say a social media marketing agency approaches me and they want to automate LinkedIn outreach. So here are the guiding questions and the answers. Is the process repetitive and rule-based? Yes. How frequently is the process performed? Likely daily or multiple times per week? Is the process time-consuming? Yes. Is the process prone to human error? Somewhat. Errors could include typos, missed follow-ups, or inconsistent messaging. Is the process stable? The basic process is stable, but messaging and targeting may need regular updates. So I often build automations for clients for LinkedIn automation, and yeah, every 2 weeks we need to adjust the target audience or perhaps change the messaging, but in general the process is pretty stable. We feed the prospects and the campaign just keeps on sending messages. The potential ROI is high. In terms of compliance, so LinkedIn has terms of service regulations that should be considered. Will the automation improve customer or employee satisfaction? And it might improve employee satisfaction by reducing tedious work. So sales team and business people, they need to prospect, they need to send messaging. This is pretty tedious, so we can automate this. Now let's take a look in terms of prioritization. So this is the impact, the effort, the risk, and the urgency. I'm not going to cover everything. Then we map the current process. So identify target prospects, craft personalized connection request, send connection request, monitor acceptance of request, send follow-ups, track responses, and engage in conversation, qualify leads, and hands off to sales team. Let's see what else. So we define the desired outcomes and KPIs. We think about integration points. We select tools, factors to consider. So compliance with LinkedIn terms of service, ease of use and integration with existing systems, customization capabilities, pricing, and potential ROI. Now, human in the loop. So we should use human if you want to craft and improve message templates, when we want to handle complex responses or objections, when we want to qualify and nurture high value leads, and update targeting and criteria messaging. Let's keep the delegation. Here's an implementation plan, and here's the risk mitigation. So first risk is violating terms of service. So we want to use compliant tools and avoid our LinkedIn account being blocked. So another risk is decreased personalization leading to poor response rate. So we want to use dynamic personalization feeds and regularly update message templates. Another risk is missing out valuable prospects due to automation errors. So implement regular manual checks and maintain a human in the loop approach for high value prospects. And obviously we want to ensure compliance. Now another use case. Let's say a brand comes to you and they want to create a customer support bot for the direct-to-consumer brand to like answer the customer. So the process is repetitive, it's very frequent, it's actually continuous. Responding to each customer individually can be very time-consuming. The basis process is stable, but content may need regular updates with new products or promotions. Potential ROI is high because we reduce customer service cost and improve response time. Then the architecture. So we map the process out, we identify area for improvement, we define the KPIs, we think about the integration points, some factors to consider, what we need to delegate, and this is the plan. So select and set up the chosen chatbot platform, VoiceFlow, N8N, Zendesk, whatever. Develop a comprehensive FAQ database. So we want to have a database which is basically the RAG for the customer, for the custom bot to answer. This is all the data the bot will have about the brand. Create decision trees for product recommendation, not crucial, but if you want to make an advanced bot, it is useful. Set up integration with order tracking systems, so connect the bot with Shopify or whichever CMS you're using. Implement escalation protocols for complex issues, so have triggers in the bot. Let's say someone writes human, so we want to trigger, we want to escalate the ticket, so a human will take a look. Train the bot using historical customer service data, so we want to export all the tickets and all the historical data, all the conversation to train the bot. Then we start with a pilot on a limited channel. So for example, only the chat in the website or only the chat in the Facebook inbox. We monitor results closely and gradually expand to other channels. Here are the risks, and I just will skip them. And the last use case is automating job scraping from Indeed. So this is very valuable, likely done daily or even multiple times per day. Searching manually and recording job posting is very time consuming. Let's move on if there is anything useful here. So we map out the current process. We identify areas for improvement. We define the KPI, so number of job postings scraped per day, accuracy of scraped data, coverage of relevant job categories and locations, time saved compared to manual process, insight generated from the scraped data. These are just examples of KPIs. Factors to consider, so the robustness against website changes, the scalability to handle large volumes of data, the ability to bypass anti-scraping measures, the ease of data extraction and cleaning. And this is the implementation plan. So develop a proof of concept scraper for a limited set of job categories, set up a robust data storage system, implement measures to respect Indeed rate limits, develop data cleaning and standardization process, very important. Create a monitoring system to detect website changes or scraping failures. Start with a small-scale pilot, scraping a limited number of jobs per day. Gradually scale up the scaling operation. Implement analytics and reporting on the scraped data. Regularly review and update the scraping strategy, and develop a plan for potential cease and desist requests. Now here are all the risks involved and the conclusion. Yeah, I guess that's it. I just wanted to share with you how I think about automation, what is the process that you should, what are the guiding questions and the things that you should think of when you build an automation, and before you decide to build an automation or delegate stuff, you should always consider the pros and cons, what is the impact of the automation, how urgent is it, what is the skill set of the team, what are the risks involved, etc. So we covered everything in this video, and obviously afterwards I showed you just a few 3 different examples of useful automations and how I would approach them, how I would think about the process, how much sense does it make, what should you be aware of, and basically how I would go about in building the automation. I hope you find this video useful. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe and comment below. If you didn't, if you have any suggestion for improvement, feel free to share. I'm constantly optimizing and trying to improve the videos for you, for the listeners, for the viewers. I guess that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you enjoyed the video. Wow, I'm all over the show. Anyway, until next time, keep on automating.